we're going to do fish tacos with salsa. Now the salsa is going to come from things that you could grow in your garden. The fish is going to come either from an Oklahoma lake or pond or river or from the supermarket, whichever one you have access to. I should throw in your father-in-law's fishing as well, because that's the best way to do it in my mind. What I'm going to do first is get a little bit of the fish started. I've got the fish. These are tilapia fillets, and we've got them patted dry because we don't want a lot of moisture. If there's a lot of moisture on the fish and you're frying it, which I'm not going to do, but if you were, it would splatter and that could cause burns. But otherwise, it just keeps it kind of soggy, and so we want to pat it dry before we get started. And then to flavor it up, since these are going to be fish tacos, I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of cumin over the top. See if I can get that coming out a little bit better there. Now I've got them spread out on a cookie sheet on wax paper. You could also use parchment paper, just a way to keep them elevated a little bit from the pan, keep them from reacting with the pan. This is a little bit of paprika. It adds a little bit of color. And we're going to spread that on that side. Then I'm going to flip them over, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, one of the things you need to be aware of, not necessarily concerned about, but you need to be able to have a feel for whether or not the water in your area where you're doing your fishing is safe to pull the fish from. There are some areas in Oklahoma where there are warnings on the fish due to heavy metals or pesticide residues or other types of runoff that you need to be concerned about. So you go online and you can check and find out whether or not any of the fish where you fish, you have a reason to be concerned. If you're buying your fish at the market, you also need to be aware of where the fish came from. Farm-raised tilapia from the U.S., we really don't have a lot of concerns, but from some of the other countries in the Far East, China, for instance, it's freshwater fish and it's farm-raised, but they really don't pay enough attention to the quality of the water. So we do have some concerns with some of the fish coming out of some of those areas. So just be aware of where your fish is coming from. I'm going to put a little bit of salt on here. Now you can pre-soak fish in a saltwater brine, and that will actually, during the cooking, help keep the fish a little bit more firm and help keep some of the flavor in. I didn't do that this time. Tilapia tends to be fairly firm anyway, so we're going to go with that. You could either do it frozen or fresh. If you're using frozen, make sure that you thaw it first. Okay, I've got a pan preheating a little bit here, and we'll kind of keep an eye on that. I've sprayed it with some nonstick spray because we want to keep the fat content on our fish down as much as we can. This is a nice recipe to try if you're not familiar with fish tacos. Most Oklahomans are familiar only with fish that has been fried, either battered or breaded. And so give this one a try and pretend you're on the West Coast and enjoy the day. I've got about one medium tomato there. I seeded it because I wanted to keep the liquid down a little bit. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. In the off season, you could use canned tomatoes for that too. That's about a half of a medium to small green pepper, about a third of a cup of cilantro, and you can play with the amount of that you add in. I've got half a cup of chopped onion. That's chopped fairly fine, but that's going to depend a little bit on how you like your salsa. If you like a little bit chunkier, do everything a little bit chunkier, and if you like it even finer than what I've got here, go ahead with that. Got a fourth of a teaspoon of kosher salt, and the juice from about a half a lime, which should be about a tablespoon. And if you didn't have lime, you could use a lemon. Lime is really a terrific flavor though. And then an avocado. Now I left it in chunks. This isn't really going to be guacamole. It's a pretty soft avocado though, so it's moving towards being guacamole on me. And then just stir this together. That's all there is to doing this. Now this allows you to have some fresh produce, and this is another thing that we're trying to increase the amount of is fresh fruits and vegetables, or any kind of fruits and vegetables really, that we as Oklahomans eat during our meals, because we are not only in last place as far as 50 states, we've actually moved beyond that. Looks like our pan is ready. In fact, it may be a little bit beyond ready. I'm going to turn it down just a smidgen. We're just going to put our fillets in here. They're thin, and they're going to cook fairly quickly. So they're going to need about 3 minutes. Then we're going to turn them and do 3 more minutes. The nice thing about doing fish as inside of a taco is nobody's going to see it. If it falls apart a little bit, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. So I've got some tortillas here, and we're going to make soft tacos. And this should make about 4 servings, although those fish are fillets are fairly large. Put a little bit of lettuce inside the tortilla. And these fruits and vegetables that we're using today came from the Stillwater Farmers Market, so there are some varieties that I'm not quite as familiar with, and they are really, really nice, the lettuce. I'm going to put a little bit of salsa inside underneath, and then I'm going to test the fish and make sure that they're ready to go. Now when you test fish, you can either do it with a fork, which most people are familiar with, or you can do it with the tip of a really sharp knife. Now what's going to happen as this fish cooks is that the proteins are going to denature, and you can almost see through the fish because the proteins are all separate. And as that fish cooks, the proteins sort of unwind, and then they come back together, and then you can no longer see what was there. So this is all there is to this. It's a really quick meal. It's a nice way to, I'm going to put a little bit more salsa on the top of that. It's a nice way to have something quick on the end of a day that doesn't add a lot of fat. You can make the salsa ahead of time. You can even use commercial salsa if you have to in a pinch. And there you go. Very, very simple, very, very tasty. These are fish tacos with salsa. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.